What was really happening inside the Ohio House of Horrors, where 16 children were allegedly hidden for years?
Did CPS know? Did anybody outside of the home know, and did nothing?
And one of the biggest questions in this case, what role did the mother play?
At this point in time, we are still not sure, at least at my office, whether my client is a victim herself or not.
Which kind of seems to indicate that she was abused. And so that would make sense that she would have less, do less to protect her children. I mean,
a forensic psychiatrist here to answer your questions about the case. But first, do me a favor, hit the like, hit the subscribe, and hype the episode. I'm Matt Johnson, and this is Justice. Here to discuss and help break down this situation, we have Dr. Carole Lieberman, forensic psychiatrist and an expert witness. Thank you for being on the programming. Now, when you first heard about this case involving these 16 children described as being feral and in this home, not exposed to the world for possibly years, what went through your mind?
Well, how damaged these children are going to be or are already. I mean, the police who first discovered them talked about how some of them couldn't communicate. The eldest one, 18, the children are 18 months to 18 years old, and the 18-year-old can't even spell their name. Clearly, there must have been until they got saved, rescued, a lot of abuse, a lot of sexual abuse, and they were living amongst feces. I mean, it was just deplorable.
Yeah, and that's going to be a situation where it's lifelong trauma.
Yes, but, people, especially children, are resilient. So, I mean, of course, this is going to stay with them in some way through the rest of their life. But if they get hospitalized, well, all of them, actually, most of them were taken to a hospital, mostly for their medical problems, but they also probably will need psychiatric hospitalization. But, if they get placed in a really loving home, and they get therapy, of course, they can get out of it. They can develop more normally. It's going to take a long time. I think the younger ones are probably going to have an easier time of it than the older ones who have been subject to this for more years. But it's always possible. Recovery is always possible.
So there's Elizabeth Siders, along with her mother-in-law. Did you notice anything about her when she first walked in? She almost appeared frightened.
Yes. Her lawyer has been saying that when he met her, he expected, of course, the media has been talking about how evil they all are. And yes, that certainly seems like the situation. But her lawyer has said that she was frightened and timid. And, there's this idea that maybe she was sort of indoctrinated. That's the word that keeps being used, that she was indoctrinated into this family because when she married her husband, she was 15 and she was pregnant, and her parents gave her permission to marry him. And she was sort of in a very kind of needy situation. And but also this relative has said that at the time that she married him, that the family wasn't as bad off as they are now, weren't as living in squalor and so on, that they seemed more like a regular family, although I don't know how regular they could be if the children were in this in a room for 4 years in these kinds of conditions. But so what's interesting is that it might not be as clear as she just being evil. Of course, you wonder, how could a mother stand by? But they've been keeping her pregnant, throughout the time that she's been with them. And then, I don't know, the grandmother just seems like she's hollow, like they're vacant. And what's really, well, we'll talk about the grandfather, I'm sure. But, so I don't know, the jury is still out in my head. About the mother. I mean, it seems horrible. How could you let this happen? Why didn't you go to the police? But I think, there's also suggestion of psychiatric mental illness in the family.
The parents, Gary Siders Jr. and Elizabeth Siders. The grandparents, Gary Siders Sr. and Christina Siders, each charged with 16 counts of child abuse. Among the allegations, the children allegedly were confined to a 12 by 12-foot room with human waste in the home, severe malnutrition, flea infestations. Some kids reportedly unable to speak normally. 2 of the children on the brink of death, according to investigators, had to be airlifted for emergency treatment. I guess a lot of people are questioning how there could be women living in the house and allowing the abuse of so many children.
Do they have a holdover? Are there drugs involved? I mean, it certainly seems to me in the way that they look, it certainly seems like maybe they have been, enjoying drugs as part of this whole chaos. But we'll know. And also, she has these red around her eyes, the mother. There's all this redness, and I really haven't been able to figure out what that is. Is that just, the conditions, or is she, I don't think it's makeup because I don't know, but there's a lot that we still need to know, but I certainly hope that none of them get bonded, because they should not be let out at this point.
And I think that she shows a little bit of emotion there. Let me play that again.
Until you can. First of all, I want to remind you of your right to remain silent. This is not the time for you to argue your case. These are serious allegations, and if you are unsure on what to do, I will enter a not guilty plea for you until you can consult with counsel. Okay? I also need to advise you that because these cases came before this court on a complaint, as opposed to through an indictment by the grand jury, you have the right to a preliminary hearing. And that's a matter you can discuss with counsel once they're appointed as well. All right? All right.
So, there are some people that believe that she could have been a victim herself in all of this. We'll talk about that. But first, I want to get your take on the husband and the father-in-law. And if you notice anything about their appearance.
God, the grandfather, an attorney for the grandfather has said that he is mentally ill, and he certainly looks it. All of them look exhausted. They look like they have no energy. They have just all the energy has been sucked out of them. And supposedly the grandfather isn't making sense, and his attorney wants him to be found not competent to stand trial, and then that as a prelude to going for a not guilty by reason of insanity defense. So it'll be interesting to see what kind of insanity he has, and how, what happened. That's the key. If they had a relatively normal home when she first married the son, what happened to make this family totally disintegrate, basically? Was it drugs? Was it a mental illness of the grandfather that came at a certain point and then that affected all of them? These are some of the things that we need to figure out.
I'm going to play another clip and get your reaction to this.
Now, we learn more about Elizabeth Siders today. Her attorney saying he believes she is the mother to all 16 of those children. West Virginia records show Elizabeth was just 15 years old when she married Gary, who was 18 in 2008. 2 months later, the first of the 16 children was born. Elizabeth Siders' attorney asking a judge to lower her bond, saying she could be a victim herself.
At this point in time, we are still not sure, at least at my office, whether my client is a victim herself or not. I have previously stated that she does not necessarily characterize herself as a victim, but the investigation from the prosecutor's office, the investigation from my office is still ongoing.
Yes, it's very interesting. Supposedly, when she married the son, she came from a very difficult childhood. It was like an escape from her home, which kind of seems to indicate that she was abused. And so that would make sense that she would have less, do less to protect her children. I mean, it's not always that way. Sometimes the person who's abused actually tries to do more, but it's like all the life has been extinguished from her. And you can kind of see if she was coming from an abusive home, this man, her husband, seemed like an escape, a way out. And he came with his parents. So she just went into that environment, because it was better than where she came from.
It's just very tragic. And we were able to see the red circles in her eye area, and she has other redness on her face. But you see the video of her, she seems almost in a zombie state.
Yeah.
And then you look at the pictures and it looks like there's some sort of abuse going on. How will investigators interview her? Will they bring in an expert like yourself?
I certainly hope so. I mean, you can't, all of those people, the 4 adults and the children need to have a psychiatrist examine them, because yes, the attorneys are able to tell something, make some kinds of determinations, but to really get specific, and to determine, for example, if she was a victim and what happened to her. And yes, the eye problems could come from having been beaten up. Another thing that's really interesting, there's a relative who said that he was estranged from the family and he didn't know that any of this was going on. So that, I think, is the most interesting part of all of this.
Is the family dynamics and what maybe other family members knew and why they didn't step in. I actually have a clip that local news interviewed a family member, and they said this.
I had a chance to talk with Ronnie Fletcher today. He married into the Siders family, and he said 2 decades ago it was just your typical American family. He married one of the 3 sisters and says that the girls had a normal upbringing, and he's heartbroken to see what's happening now. He also says as a result of all of this, his family is facing violent death threats.
I mean, that was a typical American family, you know what I mean? Yeah, getting by. They didn't have tons of money or nothing like that, but they always had a clean home, you know what I mean? The kids always went to school. I mean, you know what I mean? Like, they had beautiful daughters. I mean, you know what I mean? Like, I don't know what else to say about it, you know what I mean? Like, and the stuff that's saying that this has been going on for all these years, and you know what I mean? It's crazy.
He said if they would have realized or knew how dire the situation was, they certainly would have helped. He says they were kept at an arm's length, and for about 7 years, they didn't know exactly where the family was. He said anytime there was a phone call, it was usually a request for something. In one case, they gave him a car. In plenty of other cases, it was for money to pay a utility bill, and one of the sisters would step up and make sure it happened.
Well, just speaking from this clip, for the family members that are saying that they had no idea, they would have intervened, or the neighbors even that say they
Yes.
would have intervened had they known. Do you believe that? Would there have been warning signs?
This is like the Turpin family. Do you remember from some years ago?
I covered it. I was just thinking that.
And we didn't know what was going on. I mean, it's hard to believe that they didn't know anything because, I mean, yes, the family, the parents, the grandparents presumably kept the kids in this little room, and they were living there for 4 years. But some people actually, some shopkeepers and so on have said that they saw Elizabeth and they saw a child, so they saw people here and there. And what they remembered about them was that they stunk to high heaven. They didn't say it that cruelly, but I mean, they remembered their smell. Well, actually, a policeman said, I didn't even go inside that room. I stood outside and I looked in, and the smell has still stayed with me. So that's kind of what they saw, and I guess they didn't think that was enough to call the police.
Yeah, but is this something that children that experience this level of abuse and this level of sheltering, this is something that they can get over, right? I'm hoping.
Yes, but it takes a lot. The Turpin children, they were put into different foster homes, and some of them got abused again by the foster parents. So this is going to take very, very careful administration, careful planning, careful who's going to go with who. Also, it would kind of be important to to not separate them totally. They would need to be with one other child from that family so that they could, someone who they know shares those memories, who they can relate to. So it'd be better if they put like two children, maybe of the same age, into a foster family, in groups of twos, in other words. And yes, love can heal a lot. Of course, you have to make sure that you're not putting them in a family that's going to abuse them. But yes, if it's a really well-meaning family and preferably a family who has some psychological knowledge, maybe if some social workers wanted to be foster parents, but then really therapy, weekly, daily, for at the beginning. Now they're going to need daily therapy and then weekly.
What does this case tell you about the family dynamics going on in that household?
Well, that's the $64,000 question. It doesn't seem like the grandfather would have control over everything. He is big and he does seem brutish, but if he's mentally ill, well, maybe they're all afraid of him, perhaps. It's hard to know how violent he gets, but somebody is controlling. It's hard to believe that it's the husband, that it's the man that Elizabeth married. He doesn't seem as though he's the violent type, but you can't necessarily just tell from these short clips. But there is something scaring them into this behavior. Or the drugs that are just making all of them act erratically, just wanting their base needs met, which is, sex and food.
I just can't stop thinking about the extreme isolation with all of this and everybody involved, but especially the children. They are developmentally behind. They were referred to as feral. They were living in a situation with human feces everywhere. They were in one room, 16 kids. It's just horrible, horrible circumstances.
Absolutely. Very, very shockingly horrible. In other words, this isn't like your run-of-the-mill horror story. It really goes beyond the pale, beyond, the figuring out the interactions of the family. Now they called the children products of intra-family dynamics. I didn't use the word dynamics, but basically meaning that like they were raped by different family members, or there's, it's everybody has to be. I'm glad the judge made the ruling that each of the four defendants have to be kept separate from the other ones, because you need to hear. It's going to be really important to hear the story from each of them. To the extent that they can tell it. Now, if the grandfather is mentally ill and he can't really talk in sentences that can be understood, then more needs to come from the other people. And I think that Elizabeth and her husband, I don't think they're mentally ill, but and the grandmother, it's hard to tell what's happening with her, but they just look like they don't have any life force in them. And but eventually, eventually they will get a little better in jail with food and without the fear and all of that, and without the drugs. So eventually they'll be able to tell something, but they need to be kept separate so that they tell their own story.
I'm going to play one more clip and get your reaction to this. And I believe it's about the children, and it's from investigators.
Officials say the children were not enrolled in school. The Vinton County Sheriff says due to the children being isolated and some children being developmentally disabled, it has impacted the investigation.
It's one of the investigative challenges we have to face is that they are limited. They can't communicate.
Joseph Stewart is another neighbor that lives next door. He says he's seen the four people charged going to Dollar General every once in a while, but never any kids.
Kind of ashamed that they did stuff like that. And after I seen the pictures of the mugshot and they look pretty rough.
Investigators are saying that it's even difficult speaking or communicating with these children.
Yes. Because when you're kept in that kind of environment where nobody's reading you a bedtime story every night or talking to you about, that's how you develop your speech. You're by talking usually with your parents and siblings and so on, and the social interactions, and their social interactions seem like they were all very toxic.
Yeah, there is 16 counts of felony counts of child endangerment with Gary Siders Jr., Elizabeth Siders, the mother, Gary Siders Sr., the grandfather, and Christina Siders, the grandmother. Do you expect more charges in this case?
Yes, because I think when they are able to find out from the children more about the sexual abuse and all that, it's not just negligence. So I think there will be charges of sexual abuse and incest and things like that.
Do you see more than one of these that are charged? Do you see more than one adult claiming not competent to stand trial?
Possibly. At least like maybe the grandmother as well. I think it would be hard, and maybe Elizabeth really, because I don't know that she has a mental illness like a psychosis, but certainly the abuse that she may well have been undergoing for all these years could have caused her post-traumatic stress disorder or something like that. I think of all of them, the husband seems like the most mentally healthy, although, to put up with that, to let your wife, this woman that you love, suffer like that for all these years, I don't know that that's mentally healthy.
What are you going to be watching for in this one?
Of course, I'm interested in what part each of them played, but I'm also really interested in who knew. Did CPS know? Did anybody outside of the home know and did nothing? Because we have seen too many cases where CPS or child protection services or family services, people who are the organizations that are supposed to protect the families and children, oftentimes don't. And it would add to the horror if it turned out that they knew and they didn't do anything.
Dr. Carole Lieberman, thank you so much for weighing in on this case.
Thank you.
The children have been removed from the home and they are all in protective services with the state. Anyone with any information in the case, it's still being investigated. Call the number on your screen, 855-BCI-OHIO. Please also hit the like and subscribe of this channel. I'll keep you updated on the case and others. In the meantime, take care of yourself. I'll see you next time.